So this actually leads into what my second question was going to be, was imagining juniors have got their first job. What is juniors' biggest mistakes for entering the industry? And this kind of leads into that of essentially now we have working from home is completely different to now having context you have to follow at work. So
Mm,
it leads
mm.
into the thought you're going into now. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
continue that
so I
thought.
think like because like it kind of, yeah, it does bridge into that question
Mm.
because context is what matters, right? So
Yeah,
when you say like what do juniors struggle with the most in their first job, the difference between a junior and a mid and a senior is really going to be about like pipeline experience, right?
yep,
Juniors can still have like the capable knowledge, the technical knowledge to achieve something realistic, just like a senior might.
yep,
But working with context of a show, a budget, a shot, a team size, like just overall skill within the department changes the way that you approach something. So this
for
is what the
sure.
juniors are not exposed to initially, right?
Yep,
So because they're not exposed to this, how do you kind of like compensate for the lack of,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
So
It's funny because like yeah, people ask me like, well, how long would it take you to model this thing I'm modeling on stream? And it's like it's entirely about context. Like it's not an answer you can just give because we don't know context of shot, how it's used, if it will be destroyed. Like
exactly,
it's yeah,
exactly,
and I think that's the
exactly.
biggest smack in the face that juniors receive when they step into the industry because now they realize they don't actually know how to work in production, and they realize the art side of doing the like the modeling and stuff was just like the tip of the surface. Like it's not actually how
The tip
we
of the
work.
iceberg.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely what it is. So it's like how does a junior compensate for the lack of this?
Yeah,
And what I think that a junior getting into the industry or getting their first job, like I think what's important is that because you're selling a business, right? You're selling a service. Your
yep,
service is as a junior CG artist, right?
yep,
So the best thing that you can do as a an independent contractor that has just gotten their first big gig is to not look like a junior, right?
yep,
Not to work like a junior. You know, if I was supervising said junior, like you would want to make sure that the speed, the quality that you're outputting is all up to par. It shouldn't be. There's already an expectation that the quality is going to be lower,
for
right?
sure.
But imagine if it's not.
Yeah,
You know, imagine if like the quality in which you operate is already at a high level and your communication skills are very high as well.
yep,
Having those as a junior coming into your first position is great.
yeah. The
Being
communication part specifically, like there's a lot of, I
Mhm,
feel a lot of juniors are too afraid to ask for help because they think the expectations of them is too high, and that ends up actually
mhm,
hurting them. So I think it's much better for a junior to be open about learning, things like pipeline or asking questions about like hitting deadlines and stuff like that. Where I
yeah,
feel like a lot of juniors are too afraid to step up, well, not step up, to
yeah,
speak up because they don't want to look bad. But I feel like, I mean, you deal with bidding and stuff
mhm,
way more than I do. So when it comes to working with a junior, there is an expectation that the junior is not going to perform at a mid or senior level, right? Like that's taken into
mhm,
account, yeah.
mhm, mhm. Like when we're going through the list of like these are the tasks that we
Yeah,
have on
for
the
sure.
show,
Yeah,
and they're deemed as like a certain grade or a certain level,
yeah,
and then we'll look at the available roster of the artists, and then we'll start pairing with a task,
yeah,
right? So obviously, if like a junior on their first show like is operating at a high level, like in terms of their normal CG output,
yeah,
being very communicative, they're also good problem solvers, and then they're a pleasant person.
yeah,
Then obviously, I'm going to look to this person and have more trust in them and give them something bigger, right, and
for
something more
sure.
complex, right?
Yeah,
But if it's someone that is has a chip on their shoulder, but and doesn't communicate and is
mm,
always complaining, but their CG output is high, that still has an effect on my choice
yeah,
because even though your output still might be high, but you're disgruntled and maybe you're being toxic in a team environment,
yeah,
and also it's hard to get words out of you in a meeting or
mm,
getting you to like drive conversation, and then it becomes difficult,
yeah,
and when the industry is like oversaturated, like that you shouldn't be doing this, right? Like why? Like again, think about it. I'm going to use that analogy. A
yeah,
painter painting my house. If I ask him like, I got a I want to paint my house red. Can you do that? Like I'm quite busy right now, so I kind of want you to just take care of it.
Yeah.
And then the painter is like, actually, I think red would look quite ugly, and I don't think that you should do that. I think you should make it brown. And I'm going to take a bit longer than normal because now I need to go find this brown paint to use it instead of the red that you chose. And I'm just like, man, I just wanted you to paint my house red. Like,
For
and
sure.
now I'm just having a headache.
Yeah.
So it's like that's what I mean. It's like, if so, you have to see it as like you're a contractor, and you're selling your services, but you don't want to. You're not trying to sell a junior service.
Yeah.
You should be selling yourself as you can operate as a senior.
Yeah.
And that's why I think like stuff like mentorship is very important, because being able to talk about those concepts and those theories and that type of mindset can help you in your first position, because getting through that kind of hump of like being that timid, quiet, shy junior that is scared to ask things, if you can get past that, you'll climb the hierarchy and the ladder much faster, right?
I think not counterpoint, but I think another issue is when people go too far the other way and a junior comes in with an ego and is not willing to learn from their superiors.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I personally I take that type of stuff very seriously, because I think like having a very strong team, just like mentally, is always going to be good. Of course, you can't account for everything that could happen over a duration of a show, but the team dynamic is also very important. Making sure that like everyone gets along. Of course, it's like a job and like people have stuff to do, and like not everyone will get along, but yeah, having an ego coming into it, it's like I feel like you can get humbled very fast.
For sure, especially as a junior. Coming in with an ego as a junior is extra bad.
Yeah, and I think it's just like, what's the point? Like, I feel like as a junior, like I want to be the one that's just like a sponge.
Yeah, exactly.
Soaks it up and just like I honestly, I feel like the best juniors that I've worked with are always the ones that are just like, hey, like, can I help you out with anything? Like, I just finished my task. Like, is there anything that you want me to do? I can help pick up something, or I can help assist, another senior with something like that. Like, that's always very helpful to me, because it's like, it frees up my time. It makes my life easier.
Yeah.
And they're being helpful, and they want to be, not because that they want something in return.
Yeah.
It's just that they're like, hey, like, I'm free. Like, is there anything that I can do? Like, that's great.
Yeah, for sure.
But then if you have that guy that's just like, oh, I just finished my task. Can I just like do like a bigger asset, like something more hero?
Oh, this is beneath
like, it
me.
just
sort
doesn't
of thing.
work like that. Yeah, exactly. So it's like,
especially at the start, I think it's the most confusing when you have juniors who have that sort of attitude.
Exactly.
And I think unfortunately, like, that can sometimes be brought up by students doing very well at school, thinking they're now above their peers. But oh boy, do you get humbled as soon as you enter the industry, for sure.
Yeah,
like, you can be best
I really don't like that.
Yeah, you can be best in your class, but step into the industry and you get humbled super quick. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned from work in production that can also be applied to personal projects?
Well, that's a good question.
I don't know. How would you answer that?
Working in production that can also be applied to personal projects.
I guess I can quickly answer that. For me, it's just essentially being organized at home. That's the main thing, right?
That's a good answer. Yeah, being organized. The thing is like the lessons that you learn working in production, some of the stuff that can't be realized in a personal project, because with a personal project, unless you're doing the entire scope of the pipeline, let's say like you're one of those commercial type generalists where you'll make the asset, you'll make the layout, you'll do the camera, you'll do the rigging, the animation, the lighting, and the final comp in the end. If you're that type of person, it'll be much easier to see production workflows done in that context.
Yeah.
But if you're just making the assets, or you're just doing the lighting, or you're just doing the rig, you only have a piece of the pie.
For sure.
Right?
I think. Oh, so go ahead.
So like, I think like the best way, like for you, again, like you said, is to be organized.
Yeah.
But showing, like, it's not hard to show, like, if you're let's just assume that everyone here is like looking at assets, right?
Yeah.
There is a way to show assets that can work better for downstream departments.
Yeah, like hierarchy, like organized hierarchy, proper UV layout, stuff like that, right?
Or like an example that I like to use on the organic side is when sometimes they'll see like a character, right, and they have a costume, and it's like a very wrinkly cloak or something like that. and they just Z remesh this. So it's like
Yeah.
it's just adhering to all the wrinkles, for
Yeah.
example.
So it
If
can't
they
be
showed it
simmed
in the
correctly.
exactly, it can't be simmed.
Yeah.
So if I were to see that in a demo reel, I would think that, oh, they're not, they either don't understand the concept of, cloth simulation,
Yep.
or they just don't care. They're just not familiar of it. So now it's like I'm asking that question in my head, and then now I'm going to ask like, oh, well, if they don't know this, but that's that kind of show that I have in mind for this candidate,
Yep.
then maybe they're not the right candidate. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
understanding that kind of knowledge is something that you'd only kind of get from learning it in production,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I mean, like, yeah, I assume most people just assume they sculpt a nice looking cloth. Most people wouldn't assume you'd actually leave it basic for simulation later, right?
Yeah, exactly. Some people just think like, oh, it's just cloth. It's going to be in this way forever. Yeah,
Yeah.
when it's okay, it's rigged, and now you can't get rid of this giant wrinkle. It's baked in,
Yeah.
and then now there's just wrinkles that you just can't get rid of. So then what?
I think also a lot of the production workflows we go through are things you can't really simulate anyway. So, say for example, I could be working on an asset, and then 1 week in rigging, want to do a rigging test, so I need to quickly throw together a low poly version to get into the pipeline, and then bounce back onto working on this part, and then suddenly the client wants to see a close-up of just the head worked on. Like, this sort of workflow, just you can't really emulate outside of work. And this is obviously a big part of working in production that you don't really see as a student, is having to constantly bounce around based on the context of what's needed for each task.
Yeah,
Every day is
no
different.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing's the same.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you could work on the same airplane on multiple shows,
Yeah,
but you'll make it differently based on the context.
for sure. Even stuff like, say, for example, imagine we're working on a plane or something, but the plane ended up being like a restore from another show, like the previous season or something. Then you will need to maybe rebuild the cockpit because there's a new set. Like, there's every single asset's always different in every way. You never just clock in, make the spaceship, and you're done, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why when people are like, oh, like how long will it take you to make the spaceship? And
Yeah, like
why
there's
is it,
what's
what
I got
is
no
the
idea.
context?
Yeah, exactly.
Like what does the shot look like? Like how many shots? How close am I to this? What's happening to the spaceship? Does it explode?
Yeah,
Are
exactly.
we going to go inside? Are we going to transition from outside to inside? Is there a takeover from a realistic on-set spaceship to a CG one?
Yeah. Do we need to
Like
give this to another studio? Like, yeah.
Yeah, there's so many things at play. So it's like I don't like the blanket statements. Like how long will it take to do this? Like
How long it takes.
Yeah, it'll take as long as it needs to take.
And then, yeah, at the end of the day, you might not even get the days you would think you would need to do it, and you somehow still have to make it work.
Exactly. Like I think a lot of the time, like in production, it's like you're given a timeline,
Yeah,
and then it's like, okay, what can I do given this timeline to make the best thing possible? Because I don't think there's ever been an asset that I've completed where I haven't been like, oh, I could have done something more.
Oh, 100%. I always feel that way as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's more about like, okay, given this time frame, like, say you have 2 weeks to do something or 2 months to do something, like what could you do within those days, And so it's like a lot of the time, like maybe this, I guess, kind of relates to like, production experience on personal projects, like giving yourself a timeline can kind of help, like,
For sure.
you personally understand like what you can knock out and the quality that you can knock out within a given timeline.
Yeah.
But when you're working on personal projects, you don't have a timeline, right?
Yep.
So it's like, and you also you're not going to say, oh, I spent a year on this in your demo reel.
Yeah.
You're not going to put that in text or something like that.
For sure.
So it's like, what if you just gave yourself like a timeline and stuck to it? Then you'd really kind of see like, what you're made of, right?
It's so funny. I'm trying to imagine scenarios where you could emulate the real world. I mean, you could emulate production in personal work, and it would be straight up like someone just turns up 2 months in your project and like the design's changed, restart.
Yeah.
Like that is something that can happen, right?
Yeah.
There's just, you have no idea. Every day could be completely different. Design change, script change. Yeah.
It gets deleted.
Yeah, it's just that it's not in the show anymore. Like, it's just,
Yep.